Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Hey there, Rowan.
We're the place where we dig into the really dense stuff, the most, well, compelling sources out there.
And we try to perform a kind of alchemy, you know?
Yeah, turning that complex knowledge into something you can actually remember, something that clicks.
Right. And today, we're setting aside the usual academic papers.
We're strapping in for something quite different.
It's deeply personal this time, often pretty funny, actually.
But also, yeah, there's this chilling undertone, too, a psychic warning, almost.
Definitely. We're jumping straight into the heart of the Seth material.
Specifically, Session 27 from the early sessions, Book 1.
Which was recorded way back on Wednesday, February 19th, 1964.
And this session, it's a real landmark, isn't it? Because it just shifts everything.
Totally. The whole way they communicate changes, and Seth gives this incredibly unsparing psychological look at Jane Roberts.
Who Seth calls Ruburt.
Right, Ruburt. And Robert F. Butt's Joseph?
So our mission today...
Well, we want to excavate the key advancements from this session, you know, in their channeling.
And unlock some of that emotional freedom Seth offers them, especially around past lives.
Yeah, and importantly, heed these really urgent, practical warnings about managing psychic energy.
Warnings that were apparently vital for their safety, for the work to even continue.
It's this amazing mix of, like, high metaphysics and super practical, almost domestic advice.
It really is. Now, before we dive in, just the usual reminder, this deep dive, like all our work, is distributed totally free of charge.
Yep. On all the major platforms, it's purely for educational purposes.
We just want this mind-bending material to reach anyone who's curious.
Okay, so where does this session kick off? It starts with, as you mentioned, that classic Seth touch, casual authority.
Right. So up until now, they've been relying pretty heavily on a Ouija board, a physical tool.
But Seth, you know, the non-physical consciousness speaking through Jane, he opens session 27 with this huge, immediate change.
Jane, or Ruburt, is sitting there, probably tense, waiting to use the pointer.
And suddenly, her voice just shifts and dictates.
Good evening, Tootsies.
Tootsies? I mean, can you imagine?
It's so unexpected, almost affectionate for such a serious undertaking.
And then, boom, the first bombshell. The Ouija board, done, finished.
Immediately obsolete. Permanently.
After all that time relying on it, this mechanical bridge to the unknown, suddenly it's just over.
Seth explains, right, that it served its purpose, like an external focus.
Exactly. It helped Ruburt externalize the material initially.
Yeah.
But now it was actually a liability.
Causing anxiety.
Yeah, because Ruburt was kind of waiting in limbo psychologically, waiting for Seth to give the okay to just speak without the board.
So it was like training wheels. Necessary at first, but eventually holding things back.
Perfectly put. But here's the kicker, the detail that just makes it so human.
Oh, this is the best part.
Seth dictates that even though it's obsolete, they have to keep the board.
Why? Because he's sentimental about it.
Seth, this vast non-physical intelligence demands they keep this piece of plywood with letters.
For sentimental value.
It's incredible. And as we know from the background in the early sessions...
They didn't even own it.
Right. They'd borrowed it from their landlord, James Speziani.
So now they have this borrowed relic declared obsolete by an invisible entity.
That they have to lovingly keep forever because the entity feels sentimental.
It completely flips your script on what consciousness or emotion might even mean at that level.
It really does. It shows, maybe, that emotion still dictates things, even for non-physical beings.
That beautiful, funny irony, it just sets the stage perfectly for what comes next, which gets much, much deeper.
Right.
So Seth starts by clearing the table, literally freeing Ruburt from the apparatus. And that leads us right into Section 1, upgrading the channel from words to whole cognizance.
Yeah, moving beyond the physical tool.
Into the architecture of intercommunication.
And this is where Seth really lays out the roadmap for where they're ultimately headed.
He makes it clear that speaking without the board, that's a step up, obviously.
Yeah. But he's still fundamentally, well, frustrated by having to string out the material linearly in words.
Right, because the concepts themselves aren't linear, are they? They exist outside time and space.
Exactly. So trying to squeeze these huge multi-dimensional ideas into a one word after another sequence.
It must be like, I don't know, trying to describe a symphony note by note. You lose the whole picture.
That's a great analogy. Human language forces this sequential format, and that time delay, that structure, it inherently introduces distortion, even if you minimize the psychic filters.
So he paints this picture of the ultimate goal, the next level.
Which is the direct, unmediated experience of a concept essence.
Or operating as a whole cognizance field.
Hmm.
Okay, let's slow down there. Concept essence.
It's not just an idea. Think of it like a whole unit of data. A massive experiential download almost.
So less like reading a book about something.
And more like becoming it. Experiencing its history, its purpose, its function all at once. Through all available senses, inner and outer.
Inner senses, what does that mean practically?
It means accessing information through, well, direct knowing. Emotional resonance, energetic patterns, spatial understanding, all simultaneously.
Wow.
Seth says this state would use most, if not all, inner senses operating as a whole cognizance field.
That whole field part sounds crucial.
It is. It means the entire self-conscious, subconscious, the whole extended personality is processing the info together, integrating it immediately, vividly.
So it's like the difference between someone describing, say, a trip to Italy.
And actually being there, smelling the pasta, feeling the sun, hearing the language. One is secondhand information.
The other is a whole cognizance field experience.
Exactly. And Seth points out why this is so unique. He says, as far as he knows, the right conditions haven't really existed before.
What condition?
The unique abilities of Ruburt and Joseph, their specific commitment to this work. It hadn't really come together globally to try this kind of large-scale experiment in direct cognition before.
So they're basically pioneers. Test subjects on the frontier of consciousness.
In a way, yes. Laying groundwork for how non-physical intelligence can interact more effectively with physical reality.
And they have been making progress, right?
Yes.
Seth mentions Ruburt getting flashes between sessions.
Yes. And Seth confirms this is huge. It means Ruburt is starting to gain the ability to contact Seth.
Not just passively receiving.
Exactly. The initiative is becoming mutual, reciprocal.
Like going from just answering the phone to actually making the call yourself.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And this capacity is apparently growing in Joseph too, but his method is still a bit different.
How so?
Joseph tends to translate the communications into visionary data. Pictures, basically.
Visuals. Isn't that good? Seeing the concept.
It's better than nothing, but Seth sees it as a step he hopes Joseph will move beyond.
Why? What's the issue with the visual translation?
Well, Seth explains that turning that pure conceptual data, the concept essence, into a personal visual, like a movie,
It introduces distortion.
almost always. Because Joseph is, inadvertently overlaying his own interpretations, his personal symbols, onto the raw data. Seth wants the raw concept to land directly in Joseph's conscious mind, bypassing that visual translation step.
So Joseph's creativity, his artistic mind, is both a strength and, in this specific context, a potential filter.
Precisely.
Oh.
Which leads us to why this specific duo, Ruburt and Joseph, actually works so well together.
Seth talks about their reciprocal agreement, right?
Yes, and he addresses a concern from their friend Philip, who worried it was some kind of invasion.
Seth flatly dismisses that.
Absolutely. He insists it's voluntary, a give and take, cooperative.
So what made Ruburt the right channel? Seth says it wasn't about being an empty channel.
Right, he calls that a myth. What Ruburt needed, or rather possessed, was a high-quality intellect, an acquaintance with complex ideas already.
Why was that important?
To handle the sheer complexity of the material coming through. But it wasn't just about being smart in an academic sense.
Okay.
Seth contrasts this with, say, people deeply involved in organized religion. They might be open to inner data, sure, but their subconscious beliefs, their ingrained ideas about reality, often color the material heavily, adding to existing biases, superstitions.
Okay, so it's less about formal education and more about having fewer rigid prejudices that directly contradict Seth's core truths.
Exactly that. Rubert's mind, while having its own quirks, was already operating outside those really rigid structures. So the inevitable distortions were less, harmful to the core message.
Makes sense. Seth says true invasion isn't possible anyway. It would just blot out the person.
Right. So distortion is a given, but you want to minimize the problematic kinds.
And what was the signal for Seth that Ruburt was ready?
It was Rubert's own conscious work. Writing his book, Idea Construction, Seth says he was drawn by this to realize that you were ready for me.
So the channel wasn't empty, it was primed by conscious effort.
Precisely. And Joseph's role. Absolutely essential. Recorder, yes, but also providing stability. The energetic counterpoint Ruburt needed to let go.
A true power duo then, metaphysically speaking. Okay, so that sets the stage. The mechanics are improving, but the work can't move forward if the channels themselves are blocked.
Exactly. And this is where Seth pivots hard. From mechanics to this incredibly blunt, intensely personal, but ultimately therapeutic assessment of Robert Joseph.
This brings us to Section 2, Joseph's past lives and present hang-ups.
Yeah, and this is really the core of the session's practical help for them. Seth, with absolutely zero preamble, just cuts right through years of Joseph's self-doubt.
What's the diagnosis?
A core psychological block, an unjustified sense of inferiority.
Unjustified. That's key.
Totally. Seth says this feeling poisons everything for Joseph. His view of his own talent as an artist, his dealings with the world, and crucially, his relationship with his parents.
And Seth doesn't just diagnose, he affirms too, right?
Oh, absolutely. In the clearest terms, he tells Joseph, "You are extraordinarily gifted. Trust that ability."
It's not just a pep talk, though. Seth links this inner confidence to practical reality.
Right down to finances. He guarantees Joseph, "You will never be broke." Again, at least not to any severe degree, if he assimilates this understanding.
Wow. That's psychological freedom on multiple levels, creative, emotional, even financial.
But the deepest liberation comes when Seth tackles the parent dynamic. He just dissolves Joseph's guilt by reframing it across lifetimes.
How does he do that?
First, he says Joseph was simply saddled with rather troublesome ones in this life, and crucially, this involved not involving guilt of any sort on Joseph's part.
Shifting the responsibility away from Joseph entirely.
Completely. And then comes the really mind-bending part, the personal revelation.
Is this the yo-yo bit?
Well, yeah, that nickname pops up, but the big one. This is apparently the moment Jane, mid-trance, spontaneously blurts out that her hands feel fatter than the devil.
Whoa. A physical reaction to the energy of the information.
Seems like it. The shock hitting her system. Because Seth tells Joseph,
You had no problems with parents in the past, and my dear yo-yo, you were an excellent father to me at one time, and if I may say so, at one time I was an excellent father to you.
Okay, wait, let's unpack that. First, yo-yo. Affectionate, maybe, but also kind of points to that emotional up and down from the inferiority complex.
Could be, yeah. It's typical Seth layered meaning. But the main thing, Seth, this huge non-physical consciousness, saying he was Joseph's child, and Joseph was his child.
It just shatters any idea of a fixed hierarchy in relationships.
It reveals this deep, ancient connection between them. They aren't just channel and recorder now. They're part of an old soul group, an entity family, rotating roles across history.
Seth is basically saying, look, I know you personally from other lives. You were a great dad then. Your current parents' struggles, they don't define your core worth.
Exactly. Imagine the weight lifting off Joseph's shoulders with that knowledge. He can stop measuring himself against his current parents' expectations.
So Seth then goes into why the current parents are the way they are. He does. He deconstructs their disapproval, says it stems entirely from their own inadequate and harmful, distorted view of the world.
They're judging the world and Joseph by what Seth calls sick standards.
Harsh, but probably necessary. Seth tells Joseph, essentially, don't feel bad if you don't measure up to their dysfunction. Failing to conform to sickness is actually a sign of health.
Powerful reframing.
And to really drive it home, Seth gives the entity-level context. Joseph's parents, he reveals, are part of an entity that's incredibly persistent.
How so?
They've had 6 lives each because they're particularly stubborn about learning certain lessons.
Wow. And their collective entity name.
Aruk.
Aruk. So this isn't just about 2 difficult individuals. It's an entity, Aruk, tackling a whole bunch of its issues, its kinks, in this one lifetime.
Exactly.
Correct.
One fell swoop, Seth says. They're doing major entity-level clearing.
And Joseph?
He was chosen as the firstborn in this setup because his own entity was considered strong enough to handle being close to this intense process without getting, totally derailed by it, while still helping Uruk evolve.
So the family struggles are collective, part of a bigger energetic picture, not a personal failing of Joseph's.
Right. The burden shifts entirely. He's not the cause. He's a participant in Uruk's chosen evolutionary path.
Okay, and how does this connect back to Joseph's immediate life? Seth links it to something physical, right?
Yes, critically. He connects this psychological paralysis, this inferiority complex, directly to a recent physical issue Joseph had: immobility, a back spasm.
The physical freezing mirrored the internal state.
Perfectly. Joseph's defense mechanism, intellectually, was to think the outside world was just this wall of stupidity so messed up that nothing he did could change it anyway.
A rationalization for inaction, stemming from feeling inadequate.
Exactly, which then manifests physically as paralysis, freezing up instead of engaging.
And this paralysis wasn't just personal, it impacted the work.
Directly. Seth says Ruburt needed your strength during sessions, but Joseph was retreating internally. This created a vicious cycle. Joseph feels inadequate, retreats, can't provide the needed support, which then reinforces his feeling of inadequacy.
Wow. So the path out.
Joseph has to assimilate this information about Uruk, about his own inherent worth, about the parents' issues being theirs. Once he really gets that, subconsciously, emotionally, the false inferiority lifts.
And he'll be free to act to provide that stable strength Ruburt needs.
Exactly. The psychological key unlocks the practical ability to support the channeling.
Incredible. Okay, so Joseph's internal world is addressed. But there's an external component too, right, for Ruburt?
Yes. Now we shift focus from Joseph's inner landscape to Rupert's physical environment. And this is where it gets practical, but also slightly alarming.
This takes us to section 3. Rupert's prerequisite needs psychic energy and space. If Joseph needed emotional freedom, Ruburt needs physical boundaries.
And this is the genuinely chilling part of the session, I think. Seth confirms Ruburt has strong psychic energy, but it's often, well, undisciplined.
And he has this hidden need.
Yes, a well-disguised but fundamental need for privacy, for ordered, functional space, not just neatness, but psychic safety.
Because their current living situation was problematic.
Extremely. That one room serving as bedroom, workroom, living room, dining room. Seth calls it a bad one, especially combined with late winter blues and emotional stuff.
And the warning.
It's stark. If this feeling of being pent in goes on, the undisciplined psychic energy could erupt, resulting in psychic explosions that could be dangerous.
Psychic explosions? What does that even mean?
Seth even mentions potential chemical changes in Rupert's body. It implies serious physical consequences.
Not just an emotional outburst, but actual physical illness or reactions caused by energy overload.
That seems to be the implication. It really ups the stakes beyond just, feeling cramped. Ruburt has more power than he realizes, and it needs careful handling.
And this is where the domestic humor comes in, but with this really profound layer underneath.
Right. Seth connects this urgent need for space directly to Jane's habit of constantly rearranging the furniture.
Those Florida contortions they joked about earlier.
Exactly. Seth says Rupert's strong domestic feelings, now as a woman, explain this incredible amount of furniture movings.
So it wasn't just random restlessness. It was her psyche desperately trying to create order and boundaries externally because they were lacking internally and structurally.
That's exactly the read. Trying to manifest functional separation through physical rearrangement because the space itself forced everything together.
The external clutter and lack of division were literally causing an energy buildup.
Yes. And Seth warns, Ruburt is good-natured, generally. But you never know when the rocks will fly, and neither does he.
When the rocks will fly,
Yeah.
That sounds literal, like poltergeist activity almost.
It highlights the genuine danger, that the energy is so strong it could manifest physically, violently, outside Rupert's conscious control.
So the solution to this huge metaphysical risk is basically practical home improvement.
Pretty much. Architectural solutions for spiritual safety. Seth offers suggestions, notes they aren't orders, but urges quick action.
What were the specific recommendations? They were very grounded, weren't they?
Very. First, move the bed out of the main room, put it in the empty studio, the porch room, separate sleeping from everything else.
Creates a functional division.
Right. Second, create tangible boundaries, even if minimal. Get a secondhand rug. Use plastic on the window for insulation and maybe privacy. And crucially,
Create an illusion of an entryway in the main room.
yes, that detail is fascinating. It doesn't need to be a solid wall.
Just a psychological marker, a fire break.
Exactly, like a curtain or a bookcase, something to visually and energetically separate the main living working area from the hallway when the door opens.
Why was that so important?
To prevent psychic energy bleeding outward. Seth notes Ruburt is extremely modest in strange ways and needs that boundary, that sense of containment, especially when eating or working where the outside world could potentially see in.
That separation, even symbolic, contains the field.
Seems to be the idea. And also, Joseph needs his own workspace.
A separate room for him.
Very important, Seth says, both for Joseph's own concentration and privacy, and because it frees up the main room from having yet another function piled onto it.
Helps Ruburt too, then.
Significantly, the goal is division. Divide the functions to help divide and manage the energy. Protect Ruburt from the outside world so that it cannot leak through.
It's just amazing how the most profound spiritual development hinges on, like, getting a rug and moving a bed.
The foundation for interdimensional contact requires attention to the mundane. Absolutely.
And how does Seth wrap up this intense personal review?
with a lovely, softening touch. He relays a comment from Rupert's deceased grandfather, now an entity.
What did he say?
Just that you were both two fine kiddos. A little moment of, interdimensional family warmth after all the heavy stuff.
Wow, what a session. It really covered everything.
From good evening tootsies to psychic safety protocols.
Yeah. Retiring the Ouija board, mapping out the future of communication, resolving deep-seated inferiority across lifetimes.
And hopefully preventing any dangerous psychic explosions involving chemical changes.
Let's do a quick recap of those massive breakthroughs in session 27.
Okay. First, the Ouija board is out, paving the way for developing communication via concept essences and operating as a whole cognizance field. That's a huge step.
Then, Joseph gets this profound psychological liberation. Understanding his parents' issues stem from their 6 standards, not him.
And knowing the context of their entity, a rook, plus that incredible past life reveal about being fathers to each other, it frees him from that crippling inadequacy.
Right. And third, the crucial recognition of Rupert's unrecognized need for defined space and privacy.
Which, if ignored, was leading to that dangerous energy buildup, manifesting as the constant furniture moving and risking those explosions.
And the solution was practical. Rearrange the living space to create energetic boundaries.
Oh, and let's not forget that final little nudge Seth gives Ruburt at the end.
Right. Amidst all the cosmic stuff, a reminder about earthly habits.
He will stop smoking, and he knows it. Just woven right in there. A little push towards self-care.
It just shows how interconnected it all is. The highest metaphysics needs that grounded, practical application to work safely.
Absolutely. And if this has piqued your interest, we really can't recommend exploring the Seth material enough. The insights are just phenomenal.
We absolutely credit the Seth material and the publisher, New Awareness Network, for making sure these incredible records are available.
Yeah, huge thanks to them. If you want to read this session 27, in full, or explore the other early sessions,
You should definitely study the books and visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore.
that's at sethcenter.com/early sessions. You can find the original texts there. It's really worth digging into directly.
Okay, so for our final thought today, we learned about Rupert's hidden, well-disguised need for space and order.
And how ignoring it led to frantic external actions, moving furniture, and threatened serious consequences, those psychic explosions.
So the question for you listening now is this. Where in your own life might an unacknowledged need, maybe for boundaries or order or quiet or privacy, be collecting energy?
Are you perhaps manifesting that hidden need through constant, seemingly unrelated disruptions in your life, moving your own metaphorical furniture around?
Instead of addressing the root cause,
Yeah.
making the foundational change needed.
It's worth thinking about, that dynamic between inner needs and the external environment. Sometimes the solutions are hiding in plain sight, in the seemingly mundane details.
We'll leave you with Seth's own farewell from this session, which came after some particularly personal stuff for Joseph.
He said, "And now, most devoted friends, a fond good evening. I will always help you to the best of my ability." So there, my lovelies.
So there, my lovelies. Good night, everyone.
See you on the next deep dive.